All right, time now for Football at 4. It's powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which has a new look, new design, new logo for Season 3. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. And listen to those guys during Football at 4 right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Football at 4 brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com and win real money with their sports books along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Geoff Mosher is in for Mosher Monday on Football at 4. Jim Schwartz spoke today. A lot of action over the weekend and a lot to dive into. Tomorrow, we have a big NFC East day with Tim McManus, Jordan Raanan, John Keim, Todd Archer, and Football at 4 with Andrew DeCecco. So a lot of NFC East. 3 weeks from the kickoff of the NFL season. Let's get into it now with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. What's up, Mosher?
It's good to be on with you.
Yeah, man, and the rebranding. I like the new logo, although I thought the guy made you a little heavier than you are.
Well, I've got the COVID-19. I don't have yet, but the COVID-19 is when you gain 19 pounds because you're inside doing nothing but eating. Maybe that's me.
Yeah, I mean he has Adam a little slimmer than you are.
Well, I gave it to him. Or he gave it to me, I should say.
Check out the new logo, the new Inside the Birds podcast. All right, let's get into over the weekend here. What would you say was kind of the storyline of the weekend? Because we're getting 3 weeks away now. It seems that there's a lot happening. There's battles going on. What stood out over the weekend?
It's a good question. I think a lot was made about the offensive line not really holding up well against the defensive line in that scrimmage that they had on either Friday or Saturday. The days seem to be the same to me. And Doug Peterson was asked about it. He said he didn't make as big of a deal of it. One of the things he said that I thought was interesting was that, and I like this approach, he had the first team go against the first team thud only, which is 70. It's force, but it's not tackling to the ground. They are in pads, they're doing everything, just not tackling to the ground. But then he saved that part for second team versus second team. You want your first team. Most of those guys on the first team, offense and defense, most of them know the defense or have played in the league long enough to know and get acclimated. You need to get those guys healthy to the finish line. And by finish line, I mean the end of camp and ready for the regular season. So I can understand Doug scaling back a little bit. And when you go thud, as opposed to full tackling to the ground, it's a little bit unnatural. You're scrimmaging, but you can't do everything you want to do. So I can understand how the offensive line gets manhandled a little bit by a defensive line that's going straight at you, and the offensive line can block, but it's not full on everything. And so Doug said, don't make a big deal of it. He's not concerned. And that to me, the other thing was just the illnesses that kept a couple of people out. Jalen Reagor, I think, was out of that scrimmage. He's had a really nice camp. Everybody should be pretty enthused so far about what he's been able to do, but he did miss that scrimmage, I believe. Sharif Miller, defensive end, competing for that spot, also missed it. A couple of guys that you'd want to see out there were not out there. And so this is a big week coming up for a lot of the guys who are still jockeying for either a spot on the 53 or just proving that they should get more playing time than maybe was previously budgeted for them.
You mentioned the offensive line. What's the update with Andre Dillard? It looked like he left with an injury at one point throughout camp.
Yeah, he was back out there today not participating. It doesn't look very serious, but that's another guy that he's penciled in as the starting left tackle. He needs reps. He needs to get better. But at the same time, you can't put extra stress on him and turn a small injury into a big one, because then you're going to have a gigantic hole at left tackle. Jordan Mailata is someone that the team is excited about and enthused about, but he missed some of the early part of camp from being on the COVID list. He was behind. All indications are that he's had up and down, inconsistent type of camp, but that's to be expected when you miss a lot of that strength and conditioning ramp up that they had earlier in August. So right now you want your left tackle out there, but at the same time, and this is the game that Doug has to play. He wants certain guys out there, but he cannot afford to have them out for too long and make any injuries worse.
Let me ask you this about if Dillard, something happened to him, let's just hypothetically, would they move Peters back to left?
I think that remains to be seen. I think that they don't want to. I think that they would rather have Jason Peters, learning right guard. And then if Jordan Mailata plays well enough and catches up here over the next 2 weeks, then he can move to left tackle. So you're only really changing one spot. If you move Peters back to left tackle, then you've got to have Matt Pryor playing at right guard. So it's kind of about the Mailata and Pryor also, and how they're performing throughout the next 2 weeks of camp, and whether you're really confident in either one of them. And if you're really impressed with Mailata and how he comes along, then you want him to be your offensive tackle, your backup tackle. And if he has to play tackle, he gets in there, and you get to keep Peters at right guard. But if he's not impressive and he's not what they want him to be, and Matt Pryor is markedly better, then you start to think, well, I don't want Matt Pryor at left tackle. I might want him at right guard and be able then to move Jason Peters back to left tackle.
Do you really think that Mailata is close enough to actually start? I mean, in this scenario that we just laid out, it seems like the best option would be Jason Peters to the left and Matt Pryor to the right. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know if Jordan Mailata is that close to being ready to start at left tackle in a real NFL game yet.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Hunter. And if they had to play a game today, I think maybe you're right that they would make that decision to put Pryor at right guard and put Peters at left tackle. Or maybe if they had to play a game today, Andre Dillard would be out there also. So we'd have to consider that. It doesn't sound like his injury is that severe. We'll have to get a little bit of updated information on that. But I think that's why it's so critical these next 2 weeks. This is and this was the title of our Inside the Birds podcast this morning, big week ahead. This is such a critical week for guys to get another week's worth of evaluation and padded practice in, because even though training camp technically ends, I think, September 6th, that's not really when the team just starts preparing for the regular season. Most times in training camp, the deeper you get in, the last week of training camp is actually the first week that you start to prepare for your opponent. And then also you do a lot of game planning in training camp in the last half of training camp against your division opponents. You'll see a practice against a scout team that's supposed to either be Washington, New York, or Dallas. So you're starting to get into season preparation mode. This season, it's more important to really get into that mode because of all the missed time and to get everything on the same page. So this week, I don't want to say this is like the last week of training camp, but this is a major evaluation period this week coming up. And so it's big that enough people can get out there and showcase themselves.
Talking with Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And, the Eagles' offensive line apparently had a rough day. The Eagles' defensive line was getting a lot of praise that they had a great day, but it came at the expense of your offensive line. Any red flags there?
Well, I mean, that's always going to be the case when it's practicing against yourselves. I mean, you'll see a bunch of one-on-ones, and you'll see Darius Slay got beat by this guy, and Darius Slay got beat by that guy. And you wonder, well, is that guy that good, or is Darius Slay not holding his own, or is it just a one-on-one drill in particular? So you can't be too upset or make any judgments about it because there's no pass rush and the quarterback has all the time in the world. I would say this about the offensive line. I was just concerned in general going into camp. And so I don't know if I'm any more concerned or any less concerned, but, you've got Jason Kelce over 30 at center. You've got Jason Peters, 38 at right guard. Lane Johnson, I believe, turns 30 this year. So, 3/5 of your starting offensive line is 30 or north, and one guy is 38. So there's always that durability issue. It's been a very good offensive line for a couple of years now. But as you get older, we know this, guys start to wear down. And I don't know how confident we should be in the depth of the offensive line. It could be very good. Mailata could wind up being a real find. And maybe Matt Pryor, who started last year in the playoff game, gets a little better, and you're happy about that. But, it could be a situation where neither of those backups is great, but have to play a whole lot. And, we've seen when the offensive line falters, the whole offense can get hurt. And especially Jason Kelce. If he were to get hurt, I have no idea what the Eagles would do. If they would move Sayamalo to center and then try to fill left guard, or if they would just stick a Nate Herbig in there at center who hasn't really played in the NFL. So you're going to have to cross your fingers with this O-line that it stays healthy and that it doesn't depreciate quickly, that they play to the level that we expect them to play.
I want to get into Zach Ertz because the report over the weekend was that the Eagles and Ertz resumed contract negotiations, which is interesting after Kittle got a deal, Kelsey got a deal, and the Eagles have been monitoring that situation, I'm sure. And do we anticipate Ertz gets something done here? Now, they're in an interesting situation. You got Ertz, you got Dallas Goedert behind them. How much money are you going to put into I don't want to say a second tight end, your first tight end, but you do have Goddard. Can the Eagles really afford to put the kind of money that these other two teams did at that position?
You can always afford to spend a lot of money at a certain position if you feel like you're not spending as much money at another position. And also if you prioritize that position. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, you would say it doesn't make sense for the Eagles to pay premium rate for two tight ends. But over the past few years, they have struggled at wide receiver, been way better at tight end, and they've become a 12 personnel dominant offense to the point where they're playing more two tight end formations than anybody else in the league. So what you have to do if you're Howie and you're Doug, you have to kind of powwow and say, is this what we want to continue to be for the next 2 or 3 years, especially while we let these young wide receivers build up? Do we want to still be a 12 personnel dominant team? Is that what we are? If it is, then I think it makes sense to put that money into two tight ends and into both guys, and it can be done, especially knowing that you're not really paying top dollar to any of your wide receivers. Alshon Jeffrey, yes, although he comes off the books at some point and maybe they can do something with him. But really, after Deshaun Jackson, who may or may not be on the team after this year. If he has a good year, he will be, but he's still not making, DeAndre Hopkins money. And then after that is a bunch of guys who are young on rookie contracts. Jalen Reagor, Arcega-Whiteside, Greg Ward. So wide receiver is not a position outside of Alshon Jeffrey that they're really pouring a lot of money into. And so you can be more flexible then and say we're paying less than less than the average dollar teams are paying a wide receiver. We can do more at tight end.
How concerning is Goddard's hairline fracture in his thumb? I know that, these NFL players play through a lot of things. The thumb isn't anything crazy, but, it can affect the catching and blocking as well. So how concerning is the hairline fracture in the thumb?
Well, that is kind of remains to be seen. Some guys are able to protect it and play it, and it doesn't impact them. I think other guys it would. Last year, Dallas Goedert had that calf injury, which is a completely different style of injury, but I thought it impacted him early on in the season. So this to me is probably about how much pain you can deal with if you're feeling it in your thumb, and can you still catch that ball without it hurting you or making you tentative.
All right, Jeff, I want to go to wide receiver where they got some interesting battles and some young guys. Reagor, obviously, a first-round pick, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. The second-round pick, how's J.J. coming along, and what's Reagor looking like as we get closer to the regular season?
Yeah, we'll start with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. And, I said this in the podcast this morning. If you had a checklist you were going to create for Eagles wide receivers, specifically the young ones, right, what you wanted to see, you would say, A, you want to see J.J. Arcega-Whiteside bounce back from a really bad rookie year and at least show some development in training camp, catch things confidently, show he knows the offense. And you'd want to see Jalen Reagor look the part of a first-round pick. And to them right now, as we sit here today and talk, it's check and check. Arcega-Whiteside has come in. He is playing the X spot. He's also playing the slot. He's catching the ball well from both. He's demonstrating that he knows the offense. He's had good practices. He looks like he's a guy who can play and make an impact. Now, when it all really gets serious, we'll see. But at least for right now, he's done what he's been asked to do. And I would say the same about Jalen. Jalen has come in and really impressed the coaches with his combination of speed and play strength. We already know he's fast. Despite the 40 he ran at the combine, you see his tape speed. It's unbelievable. And he plays strong for a guy who's only 5'11", 195 pounds. They're really impressed with his play strength, his ability to make contested catches. He's caught a number of balls from Carson Wentz that you'd consider that middle or deep middle variety, which you see a lot from the X position. The deep dig is a big route from that slot in the West Coast offense. And separation at the top of the route is something that you also see. I've been told that you've been seeing really well from Jalen Reagor in camp. So, look, we can all talk about stories about guys who had really good camps, and then the season started and it was like blah, and everybody likes to say that. But there's also plenty of guys who had good camps and were good players. So make of it what you will. The point is, you'd rather hear more positive things about guys than negative things. And right now, with both of those receivers, indications are all positive.
That's good to hear. And then let's flip out to defense, where Jim Schwartz spoke today. I want to take a look at the battle at defensive end. And, they brought Vinny Curry in here. They've obviously got Barnett, who's out, and they've got Graham. Josh Sweat, I've heard some good stuff about him. What are you hearing on that position?
Yeah, Josh Sweat, I've been told, has had a really nice camp, very, developing, especially as a pass rusher from the edge, which is what he naturally is. Last year, if you remember, he played a lot of inside. After Malik Jackson got hurt, they wanted to find another pass rusher to play alongside Fletcher Cox in the middle there on the pass rush downs. They tinkered with Josh Sweat. He's got really long arms, I think 35, 36-inch arms, so he's a good guy to have in the middle to bat down those passes and get interior burst. But he's naturally a pass rusher from the edges, and he's shown that mostly this camp. And I think right now, your top four defensive ends I don't even think there's a question about it right now. You've got Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Vinny Curry, and Josh Sweat. Now the question is, do they keep one more, two more, maybe even go crazy and keep three more? I don't know, but you now have a kind of a cauldron of different types of guys. You've got your speed rusher in Jannard Avery. You've got your high motor guy coming off the ACL injury, coach's favorite in Joe Osman. You've got your fourth-round pick from last year, Sharif Miller, who I think this is a big week for because he's a fourth-round pick. And you've got the kid from Stanford that they drafted in the seventh round, Casey Toohill, who has shown good flashes in camp. I don't think he's going to make the team, but you never know. He's flashed well. So you've got those four guys, and the question is, who's going to be the odd man out? I would say right now, based on some of the information I've received, if they had to pick a guy right now to be a 50 end or make that team, it would probably be Jannard Avery because he brings that speed rush that, the first four guys really aren't known for. He's really a speed rusher. So that little X factor might help his development.
All right. I do want to ask you about Jim Schwartz's comments today regarding Sidney Jones. Did you get the sense that Jones, this is kind of a make or break for him? I mean, essentially, Schwartz is like, he's running out of time here.
Yeah, and then I think everybody felt that way going into this year's camp. He's already missed a little bit of time from injury. And honestly, the starter is Avonte Maddox. So he's gotten all the first-team reps. When Jim Schwartz talks about Avonte Maddox, he talks about nothing but praise. He doesn't say this guy's running out of time to really prove that he belongs. He says this is our guy. He plays bigger than he looks, and he loves him. So to me, you've got Avonte Maddox and Darius Slay. Those are your starters. And and of course, Nickel Roby-Coleman, who's had a really nice camp, is your slot corner. So that's your three corners right there. And after that, just like we talked about with the offensive line, the depth gets a little iffy. Sidney Jones is not really doing anything to make anybody say, yeah, that's the guy that should have been a top 15 pick. And, Crevan LeBlanc is always a hardworking effort guy and can make the team, but he's more of a special team / slot. If you're looking on the outsides and Slayer and Maddox get hurt, Rasul Douglas not having a great camp, doing nothing special, nothing new there. Although last year he did have a really good camp, so I shouldn't say nothing new. But, we saw in the regular season who Rasul Douglas really is. And, they've got the Craig James out there. I've been told has been all right, so maybe there's an opportunity. But beyond the top two, doesn't look so great for outside corner. So you wonder if this is an area that Howie looks to address either in trade or at the waiver cut down, the roster cut down to 53, and then who's on the waiver wire.
How impressive has Roby-Coleman been? Seen some good things about his play to this point. We get it, it's just training camp, but his name has been popping up a lot.
When he signed, Hunter, with the team, not only was the intel on him that he was a good slot corner, but what made him one of the best is his ability to get his hands on the football. He had a ton of pass breakups, and I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I know he was among the top slot corners in breaking in PBUs, right? And you've seen that in camp already here with the Eagles. He's getting his hands on balls, and that's what you need. Third down, guy get off the field, and a guy who can either pick off a pass or bat those passes down, especially those quick release ones, is invaluable. And so that's what they expect of him. You've seen it in camp, so that's a good thing. Again, when the regular season starts, that's when you really see if everything translates and carries over. But so far, so good, and what they expected when they signed him.
All right, Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast, the latest edition is out. You can get more on everything Inside the Birds. Adam Kaplan and Geoff Mosher do a great job. Andrew DeCecco is in the house tomorrow. We will do more football at 4. And, of course, check out the new web and design and everything. And, obviously, keep it locked to Football at 4, Inside the Birds with Geoff Mosher and Adam Kaplan, as we do it every day, 4 o'clock, right here on the Sports Bash. All right, man, appreciate it.
All right, fellas. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, man. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline, and a lot of Eagle stuff. As we said, just 3 weeks out now, and Football at 4 is brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250.